Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We're in the second hour of our Tuesday night advanced lecture, month of August 2016. So with the upcoming match between Carlsen and Karjakin coming up in November in New York, I figured it'd be good to see a win from each one of these guys. Second hour, we showed a nice win by Carlsen that they played earlier this year in the Bilbao tournament. Carlsen won brilliantly. He pretty much crushed him. This is a game that these guys played in 2006. As you know, these guys were both prodigies in their youth. And this game is roughly from 10 years ago. Carlsen was white. He was not a world champion at that time yet. He played e4. By the way, there's an interesting story about Carlsen around that time. One of our local strong players, international master Tim Taylor, he used to go to Yugoslavia and played Carlsen. Carlsen also used to go over there. They have a tournament there called First Saturday. And many strong grandmasters of today, they have gone to that tournament, and they have norm tournaments first Saturday of each month. So when Carlsen was about 8 years old, Tim Taylor, who won the US Open in 1960s, 77. I mean, he's a very strong player, very experienced player. He gets to play Carlsen, the 8-year-old Carlsen. So he misplayed a move in French defense, and he got a terrible cramped position and ended up losing the game. So as Tim Taylor himself was telling us the story, as he was coming down the stairs, the 8-year-old Carlsen goes, Master, do you want me to show you where you went wrong? So he was pretty much dejected. He said, no, thank you. And anyway, so he lost to 8-year-old Carlsen then. If you want to see the game, you can Google it. Carlsen was white, Tim Taylor was black, and Tim Taylor made a move knight b6, which is an old move in French defense called the Leningrad line. It's pretty much been outdated. So he did not keep up with the latest opening knowledge, and Carlsen pretty much crushed him.
I can beat 8-year-old Carlsen with either color.
Okay. So Carlsen is white, Karjakin is black. e4, c5. Like I said, Karjakin has played Sicilian. It's his main weapon all his life. He has been using this. Knight f3, d6. And Carlsen usually, sometimes he does not challenge players in their main lines. This is an example that he played the main line and he ended up losing. A lot of times in these positions, he played bishop b5, Rossolimo variation, which is an offbeat line, which is a line that Anand also used against Gelfand a few years ago in the World Championship match, because Gelfand was also a very good Sicilian Najdar player.
And Anand retained his title.
Right. So d4, pawn takes, knight takes. So they're playing an open Sicilian. Knight f6, knight c3, a6.
Nakamura played this against Carlsen recently and won the game.
Right. For the first time ever in classical games.
For the first time ever.
In Blitz he had won before, but in a slow chess he beat in the same tournament, by the way, Carlsen for the first time he beat Anish Giri.
Really?
So there were
Did he
two
have
firsts.
a score against Carlsen, or was it all a draw?
Anish Giri had a plus score against Carlsen. He was bragging about it to everybody in social media and everywhere. So Carlsen was happy to win that game.
Just like Nakamura.
So it's white to play now, bishop e3. Black played e5.
Apparently in this.
The main line is e6, and this
why
keeps,
is the king and queen set up wrong?
because some soldiers set up the board.
No, I didn't.
We recorded you that you set up the board wrong. Okay,
I have my cookie.
so, but in this game, black played e5. This is also perfectly playable line, and it's become very popular lately. So with the pawn on e5. And you might say, wait a minute, black already has pushed his c pawn 2 squares. Now he's pushing his e pawn 2 squares. So this square is going to be extremely extremely weak for black, which is true. But then on the flip side, black also gets some advantages, including bishop coming to e6 to the square, controlling that square one more time along with the knight.
This is similar to a Sveshnikov, isn't it?
It is Sveshnikov, yes.
But I
When you
thought
see e5.
Sveshnikov was when e5 knight d b5.
That's also another line, right? So after e5, white usually moves the knight to b3. That's the main line. But knight f3 is very interesting also. If you ever want to see a game that is a perfect example of a good knight versus bad bishop, it's in this game.
Oh.
So Carlsen could have had the big advantage, but he missed it at some point. So after bishop, knight f3, bishop e7, bishop c4, black castled. This is move 8 and black castled.
Who's junior? Is Karjakin younger than Carlsen, or is Carlsen younger?
No,
Karjakin, I think, is 1 year younger. Karjakin? Maybe a couple of years younger. Yeah.
He's a couple of years younger.
Well, was he a grandmaster before or after Carl?
Oh, after.
Well, he's younger than.
So he played bishop e6. In a way, some people think Karjakin is more talented than Carlsen. They swear that Karjakin is more talented. So bishop e6, white to play bishop b3. And black played knight c6. So this is black has is knights in the ideal squares. Black's only weakness is this square, d5, that white is controlling 4 times.
D5.
So knight c6, white to play queen e2. White pretty much is developing his pieces normally. His minor pieces are out. Usually when you get the 4 minors out, you make sure your rooks are connected. Or as kids, like Trey, like to say, the rooks can see each other, right?
No, I don't say that.
Right, he's a young man, he's not a kid. Okay, so queen e2 and black played knight a5. Putting the question to the white bishop.
To the white bishop. I thought
If
that
you
was
stay there,
black's
I'm going to take you with the knight.
So you might as well trade bishop for bishop, right?
So there are many exceptional situations. Usually white does not give up a bishop for a knight and you trades over here. But this trade helps black because
It opens
black's weakest spot, which is d5, it would be covered with the e6 pawn, and not to mention that the knight can come to c4, fantastic square.
You have 3 pawn islands as
And-
opposed to 2.
Right, black will have 3 pawn islands, but this double pawn is perfectly acceptable and good. Double pawns are not always bad.
when they're
In
the
this case,
center.
when they're in this close to the center area, they're actually good. So white never wants to have this this formation. So what did white do?
Bishop a4
It's time to develop rooks. Where do the rooks belong?
on the
Open
d
files
file.
or semi-open.
We have 2 half-open files here, right? C file belongs to black's rook. D file belongs to white's rook. So white's longest strategic goal is to build up against this pawn.
So I would say
So
F
rook
rook.
F2.
Rook fd1, very good.
Threatening 95 straight away.
What kind of pawn is the d6 pawn?
Backward.
Backward. In order for a pawn to be backward, it has to meet 3 criteria. What are they?
Protected by another pawn.
Cannot and will not be able to protect it with another pawn. So this pawn is already here, and there's no pawn here. So that's one. What else?
Not on an open file or semi-open file.
On a half-open or semi-open file, which it is, and it
Advance without it.
cannot be advanced without losing because white is controlling the square how many times?
4.
1, 2, 3, 4 times. And black is defending it 3 times. So cannot be advanced without
Well,
losing.
You play knight b3 and then advance it.
He did. He played queen takes.
Queen takes.
Knight takes bishop, and white took with the a pawn.
Take towards the center.
Oh, it's black to play. Okay, black's weakest spot is the d6 pawn. Is this a good time to push the pawn?
No.
No, because pawn takes, and knight takes e5, and this pawn drops. So the timing is not right. Actually, black has no plan to play d5 because it weakens many squares over here. And when you open up a position, who does it favor? It favors the better developed player.
White.
So
In this case, white.
in this case, d5 is also has another tactical flaw to it. Pawn takes,
Knight takes,
knight takes.
and then c4.
Well, c4 doesn't work because of bishop takes knight. So black gets away with it. But the biggest drawback to d5 is knight takes pawn. Black just drops a pawn, no compensation whatsoever. So the timing is not right.
95 is threatening right now.
So black played right, and that's why black played queen e8, because the threat was knight takes e5. It's white to play. This move is very hard to guess. It's white to play.
Either h3 or
Rook
knight
a4.
h5.
Oh, I was thinking knight d5.
Rook a5.
It's hard to suggest a good move for white. The general rule is we're towards the end of the opening, right? We're on move 14. It's around this time that you do your planning. White would love to have this knight on this square. So who knows how to bring the f3 knight to d5?
It takes
Move
4
this.
moves, but you can play it to e1 and then d3 and then b4, or you can play
Move
it
the
to
c.
Who knows how to move the knight from f3 to d5?
You put your hand and put up.
Just pick it up and move it.
Yeah, but
That's the easiest way to do.
However, in that case,
You have to be creative, Trey. Don't be stuck with how the knight moves and all that. That was my question to a 5-year-old girl who came to one of my kids' class years ago. I said, who can move the knight from f3 to g5? That was her first day. She barely knew how the pieces move. So she raised her hand quickly, and I go, whoa, she figured out quickly. There was no pawn on c2. What I meant was knight e1, knight c2, knight b4, knight d5. So she raised her hand quickly, and I said, you figured out? She goes, yes. I said, show me. She came over and she did this. See, the boys never have that problem, but the girls are much more straightforward, no nonsense. The way I posed the question, she did the right thing. I said, who can move the knight from f3 to d5? What I should have said was, who can move the knight from f3 to d5 the way the knight moves? Which was kind of implied, but I guess I had to be more specific. So that's what white is trying to do. He's trying to bring this knight to d5.
however, it would be illegal if you did that right away, and your opponent gets to.
So the route that he's going to use, knight e1, knight d3, knight b4, knight d5.
That's what I said.
So knight e1, let's see if he's successful. This is kind of elaborate, and this idea is kind of suspect. But the main reason that he played this knight because black at some point probably was threatening this and f5 next. You see, white doesn't have his light square bishop. In other words, if he pushes the f5 and opens up the light squares, it's okay for black. White cannot take advantage of it.
Also, black has bishop pair.
So this move also, in a way, prevents it.
But then you could still play knight g4.
So play knight e1, and black played knight g4 anyway.
Karjakin d5! Carlsen.
Karjakin sounds like a street fighter.
I know, right?
I'm sorry, only here, white had captured that bishop with the c pawn.
Oh.
So now it makes better
So
sense.
it's an open
I
pawn.
was thinking, well,
Knight c2, knight here, knight here. So knight g4, in situation like this, you usually hold on to this bishop. You move the bishop back, and it's just a matter of kicking the knight, and then move the bishop back to e3. There are times that you feel like maybe it's not worth it. Let him have the knight, have the bishop. So that's what Carlsen decided to do, knight c2.
You know, 2 bishops are better than 2 knights, so they found that out to the cost.
So like I said, since white does not have his light square bishop, black wants to be more active on light squares.
f5.
So f5.
You don't want to take the bishop because that helps white, right? Knight e3.
He could. Maybe he's trying to kick the bishop and have a launch an attack on this side of the board. So on f5, white played f3. It's usually a good idea to have one pawn in the center. If this pawn goes away, it makes it a lot easier for black to later on to try to push d5.
And win.
So white wants to, if pawn takes, and white is okay. So on f3, black took the bishop, takes, queen takes. Now, aside from the major pieces, we have the battle of bishop pair versus knight pair. Bishop pair versus knight pair, especially in ending, are very interesting and instructive ways to play.
I seen an endgame where the knights actually won. Both of them sacked and created a pass pawn, and then that turned into a queen and black
There are a couple of classic games in history where the two bishops beat the two knights. The most famous example is a game that Botvinnik had in a world championship match against Bronstein. He had two bishops and 6 pawns. Bronstein had two knights and 6 pawns. Bronstein offered a draw, the guy with two knights. He turned it down, and he grind him down and eventually won the game. When you read about chess and you have a good chess literature knowledge, it will help you in your own games. I had a game against the master, not that crucial title, but I had the two bishops on 5 pawns. He had two knights on 5 pawns. I had studied that Botvinnik game years ago, so when he offered me a draw, I said, no, thank you. We played on, and I won the game. Just slowly, because I had gone over that game. I had studied, and I knew exactly what to do.
Is there a classic game where the two knights trump two bishops? Because we don't see that very often.
Two knights versus two bishops?
And the knights were
And you mean with some pawns on the board?
Yes.
Well, every situation is different. The rule is if there are pawns on one side of the board only, two knights are better. If there are pawns on both sides, bishops are better because they can move from one side of the board to another in one move, the bishops. So bishops are favored. So here's the position. Is black to play? This is a strategic decision to make for black. Should he push or should he take?
Well, if he takes, then he'll have 2 against 1 in the center. For an
No,
endgame.
I think you should push.
Okay. So whatever Trey thinks, it's probably the opposite. So he took.
Yep, that makes more sense.
I said neither.
Just kidding.
Got a clear passenger on
I usually tease kids who are coming along and becoming a strong player down the road. So obviously
Thank you, Mick.
not take with the knight because d5 and black will have two beautiful pawns in the center. One of the good rules to remember in the middle game or opening, try to have a pawn in the center.
I see, Mick.
So he took with the pawn. I'm sorry. He took with the knight. See, Trey is here to distract me. And then he wants to embarrass me in front of millions of people.
at least a couple of dozen.
Yeah. So played knight takes. So what's the rationale behind knight takes?
Okay, attacking the b6 pawn.
Well, the thing is, this move, which is a very important strategic move for black in Sicilian, in all Sicilians, immediately does not work because of knight g5.
Oh, she wasn't ready.
And this pawn is also hanging now. And if black takes, that means queen takes, and black doesn't have bishop pair anymore. And these pawns are both very vulnerable.
Why can't you play bishop f6 though?
He can, but he plays knight takes bishop anyway. So immediate d5 is not playable.
So can you prepare it with rook f4?
He prepared it with rook d8.
Ah.
That's the idea. So black is about to play. Wait a minute, something is wrong with this position.
Again, Nick?
Again.
Okay, did he ever play rook f4?
No, white played rook knight d5 now.
Oh, what? Yeah, there is something very wrong with this.
Knight d5. I don't think that's possible.
I'm just saying.
Okay, so
F4, knight f4, rook.
We're having technical difficulties at the moment.
Oh, he played knight e3. He took with the knight, not the queen. On
Oh,
knight
right,
e3,
right,
he
right.
took with the knight, not
he took with the
queen.
knight.
And then he played knight d5.
Technical
Okay, so in this position, black is about to play d5. So it's very important not to let black do that. So knight d5 now. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Dang, it's me.
He took with the knight, and black to play queen f7. He didn't d5 knight twice. What should white do? Obviously,
No.
he wants to defend. This is black's bad bishop, same color as his central pawns. This is his good bishop, so he doesn't want to give up a good knight versus a bad bishop.
Knight ec3.
Knight e3 is possible, but white played queen d3.
You heard.
So queen d3, and black to play bishop takes knight. I think the reason black did this because now the queens are going to come off the board, and even though black is still stuck with his backward pawn, but his king can get to e6 with queens off the board.
Yay.
So played bishop takes, queen takes, rook takes. All the grandmasters, without exceptions, are great in endgame. So, sure enough, king f7. King is just the most ideal square for it over here. White to play, double up rooks on the half open file.
And also
Rook a d1, king e6.
Good job.
So far so good.
Good job.
So the game has a slow pace now. White is hoping to take advantage of his 3-2 majority on the queen side.
it's 2-2.
Well, these are double pawns, and double pawns are. He's hoping to trade one of these pawns with those, and he will have 2-1 advantage. So played b4. When you have double pawns, advance the most forward one, so that hopefully to trade it with one of his pawns, and then you have it 2-1. b5 is also possible.
Wait, what did Carlsen play? What was Carlsen's
I don't
last
like
move?
moving knight to g5. Wait, hold it.
Black to play rook c8.
Nick, what was Carlsen's last move?
B4.
Oh, okay.
White played b4. Black played rook c8.
He played before what?
Pawn.
It's white to play, now played b5. So
Oh,
double pawns, he wants to trade one of them.
I should have known.
Black play rook c2. And white played bishop takes a6, and black played bishop takes a.
Pawn takes. Pawn.
ba6, ba6. Somebody's talking too much.
Rick's brain is shutting down.
Rook a5. Going after the a pawn. Obvious. Black played rook b8. Black's rook are extremely active. He's hoping to play rook takes and then cause some damage on the king's side. White to play b3.
Right.
That takes the b rook away from this area. Makes perfect sense. But now with this, black gets a chance to defend both of his weak pawns on a6 and d6.
Oh, that's rough.
This is the endgame phase, and in endgame, king activity is extremely important. So again, this is an example of good knight versus bad bishop. King f1. It's usually a good idea to put your king in the square color of opposite color of your opponent's only bishop. You may get a trick at the wrong time, and you're not going to like that.
And get forked.
Black to play rook b c6. So this is a perfect example of how to play with black in Sicilian. Black's rook are in control of the only open file, and black has a perfectly good position. White's piece is a little bit spread around too much. White to play h3. He cannot play actively because black's rook can become really active with rook b2, this other rook here, at the right time. So white is basically putting his pawns opposite color of his opponent's bishop. Whatever color square in the ending your opponent has, you want your pawns to be opposite color of those squares, so your opponent's bishop can never harm you.
And also, this
h3, h5, rook d3. Okay, rook is more active here. Black to play, he's making all the useful moves that he has. In the ending, it's a good idea to advance your pawns as far as you can before making some committal moves like d5, which is not playable at this moment. With one rook off the board on its side, black will have a decisive advantage. So black's strategic goal is to trade one of the rooks. g5, white to play rook d2. So white voluntarily wants to trade
Why?
because he figured that his rook is very inactive here, can't do much, and black is about to play, for example, king f5 and g4, and king is going to penetrate along here. And at the right time, it's possible to play this move too, d5. So black happily took, takes, knight takes, and what was black trying to do all this time
D5.
to play d5. So if you give this position after d5 to a chess engine, it will say black is ahead by about half a point. And with this move, black just created a huge threat.
Bishop e4.
Bishop e4, double attack. So
Or as I like to call it, bishop e4.
rook a4, stopping bishop, move, and black to play a5. Wow, black has some grand designs for that rook. He's trying to tie up that rook. And of course, again, if rook takes, the same problem.
Bishop e4.
So a5 is a poison pawn. So white defended the knight, and now he's threatening. Is he threatening to take the pawn?
You can play rook c2.
What about bishop d8?
No.
Bishop d8 is purely defensive move, and you don't want your bishops to be purely defensive.
What about rook c2?
Doing a balance.
Rook c2 or anything like that?
So what move did you say, Murray? What?
I said bishop d8.
That was the move.
Purely
Purely defensive, but on the plus side, he's about to bring the bishop to b6, which controls some good diagonals around here.
So,
Bishop d8, and white to play. King activity is very important. Since black chances are he's not going to push neither one of these pawns for now,
Oh, yeah.
now he's controlling the c2 square, so the rook would not penetrate. So black pretty much has trapped white's rook. White's rook doesn't have much of scope. He has nowhere along this row.
and he only has a3.
He only has a3 square to go to. Of course, he can always open with b4 and open up the game. But he's hoping to win this pawn, this isolated pawn.
But I don't think Karjakin would allow him to play.
Black to play rook c1. Now it's getting really dangerous. This rook is extremely active, and he's about to play rook here. If he pushes the pawn, rook here, and he's about to win a few pawns around here.
Rook activity is paramount.
So this is the moment that white must activate his own rook. So b4. And black must take, of course.
Well, Karjakin allowed him to play b4, he won.
Takes, rook takes b4, and rook g1. He's going after these weak pawns over here.
Why not bishop a5?
Bishop
Give the
a5.
rook to the knight.
That doesn't pin.
Bishop a5 was playable, but doesn't threaten anything. Rook a4 attacks the bishop. And whatever he does, this check also might be coming. So it's black is hoping for moves like rook takes pawn, rook takes, and then bishop a5. So he played rook g1 for now. And it's white to play
A4. He's got himself pushing that pawn
g4.
first.
Well, I mean, a4 and then.
Not pawn takes, because white will capture with the h pawn, and he defends this base, which is already defended. He could defend it with the king if necessary. So he's trying to win the h pawn. So rook g3. Now it's time for counterattack. Rook b8. White's rook is active. So both sides are going after each other's weak pawns. Black to play e4. Nice timing, since the pawn cannot capture. White to play king e2. Now it's white who's about to win this pawn. Pawn takes, knight takes.
e3.
So rook g2, check.
e3.
What should white do?
King d1.
This is a difficult moment.
e3.
Well, you got to protect
I know
the
that was a
knight,
bad
so he's only got 3 shots.
King e3 loses a piece. How could this move possibly lose a piece?
I think bishop c7.
Bishop c7, right? On the rook, rook somewhere, bishop check, and the knight would be lost, right?
Right.
So white played king f1, attacking the rook. Now obviously the minors are going to go off the board. White's only choice is rook takes d2 and rook takes d8, And if you want to go into a drawish ending, aside from opposite color bishop ending, which are notorious for being drawish, rook endings are also interesting draw ending.
Not always.
If you're a pawn down, you want to go into a rook ending. I remember in the 80s when we used to adjourn games. We don't do it anymore. It's illegal thanks to all these strong computers. We used to adjourn games. When it wasn't over in the evening, we adjourn the game and we still write our move. We don't let our opponents see the move. We put it in an envelope given to the tournament director. Next morning or next week when we come in, he opens the envelope and he shows our move to our opponent and he says, okay, start the clock. So I had a adjourn game against an expert and it looked very drawish. So I analyzed the position by myself. We didn't have chess computers back then, mid-80s. And I found a way to win the game. And you know, when we resumed the game, I won the game. But my opponent he had a lot of quotations that I had all over the chess room in our chess club back in Houston. So he came up with a new quotation based on this game. He said, all the rook and pawn endings are drawn, except those adjourn against senior masters. So something that I used to do over there, have a quotation from all the club masters, and we would frame it and put it all over the room. So maybe we should start something like this here. Anyway, so in this position, so it came down to rook endings, which are, like I said, notorious for being drawish. But black has the advantage here big time. Why? Better rook position in the 7th rank, his opponent, and better king position, more active king. These two alone, even though materially it's equal, that should give black decisive advantage. And not surprisingly, black won this game.
And not surprisingly.
So in this position, after rook d2, rook d8, white played, black to play h takes g4, and white played h takes g4, and black played e takes f3. So now black is a pawn up 2. Better rook position, better king position, and an extra pawn. That's a win, guys. That translates into a win. Even without extra pawn, this probably was a win anyway. But especially these two powerful passers.
And those actually decide the game.
Anybody knows the definition of a pass pawn? No funny responses. Real response. Yeah.
A pawn that cannot be blocked or captured by any other pawn on its way to the promotion square.
Wrong.
Pawn that's passive.
A pawn that is passed. He always gives the cutest answer. Okay, seriously though, pass pawn is a pawn that on its way to becoming a queen, there's no opponent pawn in front of it or in the adjacent files. So by definition, we have 3 pass pawns in this position.
One.
This, and that. Okay.
One pass pawn is gone.
So
Indeed, you're right.
it's white to play now, and Carlsen is struggling to get a draw, obviously, in this position. He's hoping to win this pawn, which he can, by rook here, but then he means black will take this pawn also, or black could go after this pawn immediately, because that pawn by itself is not that dangerous. If these two pawns, if this pawn goes, this is an absolutely easy win. So he gave a check. So he may go after this pawn next, or after this pawn, depending on what black does. White to play, king d6.
White to play king
I'm sorry,
d6?
black to play, king d6.
Come on. Right.
White to play, rook f8. He's going to after f pawn finally. So in situation like this, you want to capture as many pawns as quickly as possible. So rook takes a2. But this position, if you give it to a chess engine, it will say black is by 2 points. 2 points means winning, or 2 pawns.
Decisive advantage.
Right.
And
Winning advantage, actually.
Hmm?
Winning advantage.
Mhm.
So it's white to play, and he can take this pawn. That's perfectly fine. But he pretty much will have a lost position.
Perfect.
will push the pawn, followed by king nursing the pawn, and black has a one game. So he went after the g pawn. He figured this is a weak pawn. If he ever gets a check, the king can go after it. But if he takes this pawn and goes after the f pawn, then he has his own g pawn to push. So played rook f5. Objectively, though, the game is still lost for black. For white.
Shutting down.
So he played king e6, and white took the g5 pawn. And one of the oldest and the most effective rules in chess, which came up by Persians, thank you very much, is passed pawns should be pushed, which implies as quickly as possible, of course.
Oh.
d4.
What's that, D4?
So the game only really lasted 2 more moves. White naturally played king f5.
King?
Rook f5, tray. Black to play, passed pawns should be pushed. Pawn push. And what's the idea?
D2.
If rook takes f3,
If rook takes F3, then D2.
Rook E2. Oh, can't do rook E2.
Then king comes along.
this is where a lot of people could go wrong. This is a tricky position.
Yeah.
If rook takes f3, black wins easily. How?
D2.
Yeah, you have to be
Oh,
careful with your move order.
No, no check.
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 Get a rook A1 check.
Check first, king f2 the only move, g2 is no good. Then push the pawn, and that means the pawn will queen. That means he
what.
wins the rook for that pawn.
Yes.
So that's why rook f3 is a mistake. So after king e6, white played rook g5.
Like that?
It's still a little bit tricky. I'm sorry.
Wait.
No.
I thought he played
Rook f5, d3, white to play rook king e1. Reasonable move, right?
Yeah.
Rook E2, Zwischenzug.
Zwischenzug. That's
Well,
not
not really,
that's
but-
not Zwischenzug.
Not really, but it's.
Black to play, and on black's next move, white resigned.
Key 2.
No.
So
Rook E2. Those are features.
Are you listening to Trey?
yeah. I don't know if that's a good idea, but
Do you know his rating?
higher than mine.
Okay, that's good
Well,
enough.
that doesn't matter because then you push one of the pawns and it's
Right, after rook e2, whichever side this king goes, you push the pawn on the other side. And that was a decisive move. Carlsen resigned here. But this game was played 10 years ago, so these days things are a lot different.
Yeah.
Carlsen, they both have come on very nicely. Maybe Carlsen a little bit better. So
Karjakin did
if you ask me, I would say Carlsen is the favorite to win the match.
Of course, he's
But
higher rated.
we should not underestimate Karjakin at all.
Okay.
It would not surprise me if after, say, 12 games, the score would be even. Karjakin is extremely talented.
And very strong.
So hope you guys enjoyed it, and it's over.